I wanted to share with you today how to subtract polynomials. So this is your next algebra assignment, your set of notes. You will take notes as you review the video. You will submit those in Canvas. We will practice this week in class. Before we jump into polynomials, I wanted to remind you about the distributive property. In the 7th grade, you learned to distribute. There is a negative here that is touching these parentheses. So I can distribute or multiply that negative to eliminate it to help me solve. I'm going to bring down the 2y because it's not part of that distributive property. It's outside the parentheses. Negative, and if I need to give it a value, I can call it 1. But a negative times a positive is a negative because they're different signs. And a negative times a negative is a positive because they're same sign. And I bring down the 2. And again, if I needed to do that by 1, I can. It's the same thing. It's not necessary, but if that helps you, then that's what you need to do. And then I would just combine my like terms to say my answer is negative 2y plus 2. We're going to build on this, and we're going to use this in algebra to subtract polynomials. This is our first example with subtracting polynomials. My recommendation to you would be to distribute out that negative and make it a positive. Now that is not the only way to do it, and I'll show you another way, but to me and in my previous year's experience, this has been the method that has been the most successful for my students. So I'm going to distribute out this negative. So I have a cubed minus 2a squared, and it's going to be a plus because now I'm distributing out that negative. Negative times positive is a negative. And then a negative times this negative is a positive. So essentially, all I did was change the signs. I changed the positive 3a squared to a negative 3a squared, and I changed the negative 4a cubed to a positive 4a cubed. So I switched them to the inverse, which did what I really wanted it to do. It allowed me to have this plus sign in the middle. So then I'm going to check for my like terms. I have a cubed and 4a cubed, and I know that this a cubed has a value of 1. So 1a cubed plus 4a cubed is 5a cubed. And then I know negative 2a squared minus 3a squared is negative 5a squared. So that's my final answer. Now you absolutely do not have to inverse your signs, but I have found in the past I have more students have that as their most successful way of solving. But like I said, totally your choice. You have to figure out what works for you. Let's look at the same problem. Let's just solve using the regular method without making any changes. So I'm going to find my like terms, a cubed and negative 4a cubed minus negative 4a cubed. Don't forget to include this minus sign in the middle. So I know according to my sign rules, I change subtraction to addition and I change the sign after. So 1a cubed plus 4a cubed is still 5a cubed. Then I'm going to work with my squareds. I have negative 2a squared minus 3a squared. Change subtraction to addition, change the sign after, and they're both negative. Negative 5a squared. So the method is totally your choice. You do not have to distribute out the negative if you don't want to. You can, if that's helpful for you. It's totally your choice. The end result's the main thing. Can you, using whatever method you choose, get the right answer? Throughout the rest of the video, I'm going to mix them, and that way you can see them both ways and you can decide which method is best for you. Here's our next example. I'm going to do the distributive method again on this one. I'm going to distribute out the negative sign. So I'm going to bring down 4n minus 3n cubed plus A negative times a positive is a negative, negative 3n cubed. And again, a negative times a positive is a negative, negative 4n. Then I'm going to look for my like terms. In this example, I have n cubed as my largest exponent. Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. And then 4n minus 4n, that cancels. That's an inverse pair, so those are gone. And my answer is negative 6n cubed. Here's our next example. I am not going to distribute this one. If that's what you prefer, you can do that. And if that's not what you prefer to do, that's okay too. I'm going to look for my like terms, which is r to the fourth and r to the third. So for my r's, I have 3r to the fourth minus r to the fourth, which is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2r to the fourth. Then I have 4r cubed minus negative 5r cubed. And I know that two negatives together make a positive, so I'm going to change those signs. So now what I have is addition. 4r cubed plus 5r cubed is 9r cubed. So my final answer is 2r to the fourth plus 9r cubed. Okay, I'm going to distribute this one. If that's not what you prefer, you are not required to do that. Figure out what works for you. I have 3x to the fourth minus 3x. I'm going to change my sign to a plus. A negative times a positive is a negative. And then a negative times a negative is a positive. So I have just distributed the negative sign or the subtraction sign just to give me that plus in the middle. I'm going to start with my x to the fourth because that's the biggest. 3 plus 3 gives me 6x to the fourth. And then I have my negative 3x's. Now these don't cancel. I have negative 3 on the left and I also have negative 3 on the right. So those do not cancel. I'm going to add that together because they're same sign. So my final answer is 6x to the fourth minus 6x. Here's my next example. I am not going to distribute on this one because I did the last one. I'm going to look for like terms because there's so many. So the first like term I'm going to look for is the one with the largest exponent because I know it goes first. I have n to the fifth as the biggest. So negative 6n to the fifth minus for the sign in the middle. And then the 8n to the fifth is also negative. Using what I know about my integer rules, I know two negatives together automatically make a positive. Change subtraction to addition, change the sign after. Negative 6 plus 8 is positive 2n to the fifth. So I've used my n to the fifths. Those are fine. I have n to the fourths next. I have negative 8 and negative 6. So negative 8 n to the fourth minus negative 6 n to the fourth. Again, using what I know about my rules, I'm going to change these two negatives to addition. And then I have negative 8 plus 6, which is negative 2 this time, n to the fourth. Always keep the sign of the largest number. Now this is where this gets just a little bit tricky. I have some terms left that I don't have anything to combine them with, and normally I would just bring them down. And for the 3, that's fine. I can just bring the 3 down. However, on the right side, I have negative 3n. So what that is kind of saying is 0 minus negative 3n. Now using what I know, I have to change subtraction to addition and change the sign after. So this is going to turn into a positive 3 because this is a subtraction problem. So you have to be really, really careful in subtraction. That's a rule that does not come into play with addition. So that's something you really have to watch for if you do not plan to distribute. And that's fine if you don't, but just make sure you're aware in subtraction, sometimes there's an extra step. So my answer in descending order, 2n to the 5th minus 2n to the 4th plus 3n and then plus 3. This 3 I had on the left that I didn't have to do anything with. And if the negative 3n would have been on the left, I wouldn't have had to do anything there either. But since it was on the right in subtraction, then I had to change that sign. Here's our next example. I am going to distribute this one because I did not distribute the last one. So I'm going to bring down my first part. 8n minus 3n to the 4th plus 10n squared. It's now going to be addition. A negative times a positive is negative 3n squared. A negative times a positive again is a negative, negative 11n to the 4th. And a negative times a negative is positive. So that's going to change to plus 7. Since I have just distributed out the last negative, I'm not going to have to worry at the end this time about changing the sign of the 7. I've already taken care of that and that's finished. So I'm going to look for my like terms. My largest term is n to the 4th. Negative 3 plus negative 11 is negative 14 n to the 4th. I do not have any thirds. No thirds. I do have squareds. 10n squared plus negative 3n squared is positive 7n squared. I have an 8n on the left, so plus 8n. And then on the right, I have this positive 7. So this colorful little beauty right here is my final answer. It has 4 terms. Negative 14n to the 4th plus 7n squared plus 8n plus 7. Here is another example. I would like you to pause the video. I would like you to try this one on your own using whichever method that you prefer. Okay. I'm going to work this one out and I am not going to distribute because I did that on the last one. So my largest exponent here is to the 5th. So I have negative 6a to the 5th minus negative 11a to the 5th. I know that those two subtractions together change to a positive. Negative 6a to the 5th plus 11a to the 5th gives me positive 5a to the 5th because I kept the sign of the bigger number, which is now negative. My next largest term is going to be my 13a squared and my 10a squared. So 13a squared minus negative 10a squared. I know again that I changed subtraction to addition and changed the sign after. You can't have those two negatives together. 13a squared plus 10a squared is 23a squared. Finally, my last terms, negative 2a minus 9a is going to give me negative 11a. So my final answer, written in descending order, is positive 5a to the 5th plus 23a squared minus 11a. So that's my final answer. This is our last example for the notes. On this one, I am going to distribute out the sign. If that's not what you want to do, you don't have to. I need you to find out what works for you. So I'm going to bring down my 14p to the 4th plus 11p squared minus 9p to the 5th. And now this is going to be addition. A negative times a negative is a positive. Can I make a smiley face? 14. A negative times a positive is a negative. And then lastly, a negative times a negative is a positive. I'm going to look for my largest terms to work with first, so I can have my answer in descending order. Negative 9p to the 5th plus negative 5p to the 5th is going to give me negative 14p to the 5th. Next, my largest term on the left is 14p to the 4th. I don't have any of those on the right, so I'm just going to bring that down. My next largest term, there are no thirds, it's going to be 11p squared. I have positive 11p squared on each side. 11p squared plus 11p squared is 22p squared. And finally, I have on the right side positive 14. So this is my final answer.